Welcome everybody to the indie venue panel, The Sounds That Move. We're very excited to be here. I'm personally very excited to have this group of absolute legends. These are titans in the live music industry in New York City, and obviously that goes without saying, well beyond, because everything we do here impacts the world. And these people on stage, I don't know if everybody's even been in the same room together. I've been blessed to have worked with all these people before. They've allowed me to come into their spaces and curate events and experiences. But the people that you see on this stage are basically responsible for all of the spaces in New York City where the best culture and live music happens. And it's an honor to have this group of people together. So I just want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves as we start off.
Thanks, Al. It's a really nice introduction. I'm Alex. I'm the owner and manager of Silo, this venue. So Dylan is the closest, I guess. Just real quick background. Silo's been open for 3 years, and you can see the venue. We book a lot of electronic music, house and techno, but also live shows. And we'll be hosting Tenerial tonight as part of the Sounds Like New Festival.
Hi. I'm Larry, founder of SOBs, and still a partial booker of SOBs. Probably the only Manhattan venue we have.
Sometimes doorman too.
And I'm really happy to be part of this panel. And for me, to come to Brooklyn is once in 40 odd years. So that's awesome.
Hi, I'm Mark Luxama. I'm the founder and owner of Cafe Erzulie and Dambala, and I'm also excited to be here.
Hello, I'm Caroline Safran. I am a photographer and I'm the director of marketing for Baby's Alright and Nightclub 101 and Funny Bar. And I'm happy to be here as well.
I'm Todd Patrick. I am the founder and fix-it man at Transpicos and Market Hotel.
I'm Rami, founder and president of Elsewhere, nearby around the corner, and we've been around for 9 years in the area.
Thank you guys again. Thanks for being a part of this, and everybody in the room. You know, this is a unique experience. I hope everybody is appreciative of what we have here today. So I want to start the conversation talking about culture and identity in a space, because from a broader perspective, I feel the live music and just music in general is a very unique and important vehicle in bringing people together and allowing for culture to happen. Because there are very few things, at least from my view, like music, like live music, that can bring both like-minded people and people with disparate viewpoints and cultures together into a space where there's creativity in the air and just energy is mixing. And to me, that's the recipe for culture to happen. So that's a very special thing. And thank you guys for, again, creating the spaces that allow for those moments to take place. But one thing that I think is really special about this group of people and your venues is all of your rooms have their own culture and identity. So I want to just give everybody an opportunity to talk about what it means to have a culture in a space and an identity in a space, and how do you go about creating that?
I guess I'll go first because I'm sitting here.
Let's go in order.
Okay, thanks. Silo, like I mentioned before, we've been open for 3 years, and it took us actually a little while, a good year, to really settle into what we felt was like our niche and have regulars and get an identity as a club. We're super welcoming. We book pretty diverse in electronic music, so it's not just techno or not just house. We book a lot of bass music. We work with Move Forward, for example, do hip hop shows and R&B, and a lot of just the people who kind of own and program the club have pretty eclectic and diverse music tastes as well. So a lot of people will come here to discover stuff, I think, they just sort of trust the venue and the programming. And then as far as that culture and identity is, we have a good sense of humor about our booking, and our social media presence is very silly. So I think that's part of it. It's disarming in its own way. We approach everything as we're now a 500 cap venue, but I got into this just from throwing endless house parties and loft parties and having that welcoming sense. And it is disarming. We make fun of ourselves all the time, as like we're in this big garage airplane hangar. And I think that that sort of joy or happiness that underlies it makes people comfortable, and they can kind of be their own best selves when they're in a place. I don't know that you can really demographically pigeonhole it, but it is like a vibe. There's a sense, like, hopefully, that everybody picks up from the space.
Absolutely.
SOB started 44 years ago. Originally, it was Sounds of Brazil, a Brazilian club. We learned really quickly that we couldn't survive on just Brazilian music. So the next series we did was called Africa Meets Brazil. We were really blessed. It was a time where all these great African big bands were finally like leaving, going to Europe, coming to the States. And at the time, you know, we had great artists like Fela play the room, King Sunny Ade play the room. And we basically progressed. Our booking has never really changed. It's gone from Mother Africa and how it approached South America, Central America, and North America. So to this day, it's still very Afrocentric in nature. But as time goes by, we've added so many different types of events, just not music. Most recently, we had a domino night. We have a game night. To survive in the business, you sort of pride ourselves on 90% of our booking is our booking, not depending on agents, not depending on, you know, flavors of the month. And so in that sense, we're unique. And in the same way, we want to do the best, invite everyone from New York into a safe environment. And that hasn't changed.
Let me follow up on that a little bit. Talk a little bit about that transition, because as you mentioned, 44 years. I mean, sheesh. Larry always tells me the story of the first hip hop show in downtown Manhattan. It was KRS-One in 1982 at SOBs, if I'm getting my dates accurate. Fat Joe was there as the hype man, a young teenager. So just to give you a sense, so now he's courtside at the Knicks game, you know, the big accomplishment. But just to give you a sense of how long Larry's been in the game and really creating those important cultural moments. So talk a little bit about like how you've managed to keep the SOB's brand relevant and pivot through the different generations and different time frames, and like how have you stayed close to what's happening in culture and youth culture in particular?
I keep hiring younger and younger people. This is the truth. When I first started, I told my wife that as I get older, I hire younger. So I would say now the average age of like booking assistants and people are anywhere between 19 and 23. They have the ears. I give them an enormous amount of room. We have another alumni or intern that started here. Now he's with Alex, but
Shout out to Keelan.
so yeah, I mean, the bottom line is I sort of lead the ship, but I really depend on my whole team. You know, I have the experience. They really have the ears right now. So it's sort of, we guide each other.
Cool, Mark. I mean, I've always admired the ability of Cafe Erzulie and now Dambala to not only have its own culture, but a real community that is very loyal and like I think shares the identity with the venue. So I'd really love to hear you get into how, like what the process was like for you to build that community and get people to buy into what you're doing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that at least gave me a bit of an advantage in establishing community was that I'm very much sort of a contemporary to the people that are doing the thing now, right? So I think it's quite rare to find someone who's 25 years old, opens up a venue and is able to sustain that for now 9 years. And I think, you know, a lot of the booking is just authentic to the things that I'm interested in. And as a result, it reflects sort of my interests and the things that I find to be interesting, which are probably different than a lot of you know, or your traditional venue owner or your traditional booker. You know, we're doing everything from DJ parties to weddings to poetry slams, all of which have an Afrocentric angle as well. But again, I think the ability to create the community was predicated on the fact that a lot of the things that are happening now are happening from young people, and I'm still quite young. And so, you know, I'm friends with the DJs. I actually go out of my way to get to know these people, and to even help them, right? I would say a lot of the people that we work with aren't necessarily the most business oriented, but as a result of me having some business acumen, um, I've been able to sort of assist, and that's built trust, which I think has been fundamental in sort of building community.
Absolutely, can't have a community without trust. Caroline, so obviously Babies is a institution and has its own culture and community there, and brings in a lot of different crowds. But talk about what does the identity of Babies All Right mean, and how does you feel that that's been built?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I think Babies and same with nightclub are not known for one specific thing, although often I'll talk to someone and they'll be like, oh, I thought that was just an indie rock venue. Oh, I thought that was just an R&B venue. Oh, I thought that was just a club. And so there really is space for everything, and it's sort of abstract, but it does come down to the thing we say over and over, which is it's a feeling. And I think that feeling itself is just kind of familiarity and, like you were saying, trust. You know, everyone that works at Babies or nightclub has been there for a long time and is part of their own individual scene and is over and over bringing in their people, booking their friend's band, booking their band, doing a DJ set in the front room, you know, doing a reading in the basement of nightclub. And week by week, every week, I'll write a personal take about each event and say, this is that, and this is my connection to it. This is my coworker's connection to it. And I'll be honest about that. And I think that level of trust and intimacy is what makes Babies really unique, is that kind of level of personal effect.
Amazing. And I think for Todd and Rami, just to piggyback off what Caroline said, I think for both of your spaces, I know I've done a lot of Market Hotel, so I always feel this way, that your perception of what the venue is really depends on what kind of events you go to. And, you know, like I know when you come to a all ages rap show that Move Forward is putting on, it's quite a different vibe if you go to Market Hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and you know, the dance culture is there. So, but I still think, again, there's a culture and a feeling inside the four walls. So I just want to talk about, you know, give a little insight into how you build that and how you manage to keep it consistent and keep it true to the venue itself while bringing in those different crowds and bringing in different artists and different cultures.
Yeah, I mean, Market has been around for almost 20 years now. Transpicos for more than 20, and I've been doing stuff before that in New York. You know, both these places have always been about trying to cultivate and sort of serve the underground, which is something we don't control, we don't own, we don't produce it, but we can help create a petri dish for it to grow in. And that becomes, you know, it's obviously not as simple as 2 + 2 = 4. You know, you have to, it's an always moving thing, and there's many undergrounds, many different sort of entry-level points to music that take up a space of the capacity of, I mean, Transpico's pretty small. Market Hotel's not huge either. And so it's also, you're always working with different scenes that are ebbing and flowing, different groups of people, obviously all much younger than myself, to echo what you had to say. And that's the key, is like, from a point of view of being the person in charge, it's to keep people interested in wanting to use the room as much as wanting to come to the room. It's keeping an eye on what's happening in scenes that maybe aren't even yet connected to what you're already doing in the room, and realizing that people have extremely different perceptions of the place based on which events they choose to come to or which events they mount in the space. You know, we do a really wide variety of programming, and there are many different genres that think of it as the spot that is their spot. Whether that's some kid coming to Screamo shows who's 17 years old, whether it's somebody coming to hip hop stuff, whether it's somebody who goes to the theme nights we do. And many of them are completely unaware of the other things that happen in the space. And that's fine, and we're happy to be something for all of them. But the struggle to stay relevant, especially for spaces old as ours are, is to mean something that has a universality among all different people. Obviously, if you're familiar with those spaces, their brand, if you will, at least Market Hotels, is Old New York. It's the idea of this uninterrupted progression of the New York underground creative community, and staying true to that and staying relevant to that is challenging, especially as I personally grow older and further apart from it. But I'm happy to have a team of very young, very enthusiastic, very excited people who want to keep that alive. And my job, of course, is to keep those people excited and wanting to come back.
Amazing, nice. Rami, just I would say the one thing I would just be curious if in your answer is everyone's talked about booking and talent and stuff, but as someone who's been involved in the operations side as well for many years, what are, as part of the answer, if you could try to include, what are some things that you've done in the space itself that, like Todd said, make people want to come back to the space, just to come back to elsewhere, regardless of what talent is involved?
Well, I mean, the simplest answer to that is, we started out as a completely illicit underground spot that was, hidden off from the world and tried to be as invisible as possible. And we went through a long process of legalizing. And one of the things we did to legalize is to take off the backdrop behind our stage and put a window to the subway going by. And that's probably the most simple answer to one of the things we did to try to make it have a universal kind of vibe of being, if there's the Brooklyn brand we've all heard too much about for 30 years, but there's also the Brooklyn brand within New York for New Yorkers.
Right.
And that's what we want to be.
Amazing.
We don't give a shit about people from outside the city.
That's what this festival is all about, so thank you. Yeah, we don't give a shit about anything else. Rami, to you?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, Todd said it really well. I think it's the beauty of kind of representing New York and all of the opportunities and people who live here. I think all the venues here today have all kind of said something similar, is because it's a great cultural city, and if you aren't kind of participating with all the different audiences that live across all the boroughs, it's kind of a missed opportunity and kind of a great way to just continually learn and discover new things. And I'd say for Elsewhere, discovery has always been a key element of it, of like trying to find something unique, so try to find something different, not just like locally, but internationally, and trying to bring those artists to New York and give them a proper welcome here and really help them kick off their careers. And I think similar to Todd and from that era of Williamsburg, of just like knowing how to change the space and the way it looks, because you always need to give people a reason to come back, whether it's like changing some of the art installations, whether it's the sound system, even these smaller things of just like lighting and just where the stage could be, whether it's in the round or in a different room, just kind of gets people to think of you in a slightly different way. And that's the kind of experience you always want to change for folks. But I think everyone said incredible things and kind of agree with most of them, yeah.
Totally. I mean, I think that's one of the special things about all you guys and just having independent venue, and why it's so important is that you guys all have the ability to, bring your visions and your, like, what you want to see in your vision of what nightlife should be into a space, which is, for some larger companies may not be as, as readily available option because, everything has to fit into a certain box. But you guys are really creating your own box, and that's a really special thing. Moving along, we don't have to have everybody answer every single question, so I'm gonna just try to direct them a little bit, but obviously everyone feel free to jump in. But while we're on you guys, talking about venue spaces and everything, you guys started your careers before Elsewhere and Market Hotel, really in the DIY venue space, which I'm not so sure even really exists in New York anymore, but it was a very special time in the 2010s when there were a lot of sort of unofficial pop-up style venues that were operating in Williamsburg, and it was a little bit more of a Wild West landscape in terms of where you could throw a show, and Yes, so the landscape has changed quite a bit. I want to talk more about that in a broader sense, but why don't you just talk about the DIY scene of that time and how it's a little bit, what's changed since then, and in your experience running a venue that's a DIY to more official. Todd, in your case, maybe a little bit more official.
100% efficient. I mean, for me, I mean, obviously, for years and years and years, I did really underground illicit stuff that was, illegal, straight up. And, I don't do that
Statute of
anymore.
limitations has passed, so don't worry, we're good.
Come and get me. I mean, one of the things you learn from that is activations of things. And, to speak to what Rami said of changing things, of catering, of building and being something new, you're activating a space that makes people exciting. I mean, one of the ways that we made what was, for decades, a very marginal, very, off-putting kind of underground for a lot of people, made it more palatable, more interesting to the wider community of New York City, was to sort of, to be honest, traffic and a little bit of real estate voyeurism. People want to check out that weird spot you've activated. People want to hear what it is. They want to go look at it. So keeping that energy and realizing what it takes to get that critical mass of individuals into a 500 capacity space, you got to think about the same kind of skills it takes to activate a raw warehouse to be a nightclub for a night. You got to do that with the staid nightclub you've seen a million times and make that feel fresh to people. That means changing a lot of things. It means really trying to keep it fresh as much as you can. Even if our vibe is about being kind of a classic space, you still have to constantly update. I mean, we're always redoing the lights. We're always upgrading the sound. And it's not just that stuff, the nuts and bolts. It's trying to change the market. It's also and obviously we all live in a world where the way things are marketed almost matter more than the product. It's changing how we market. It's keeping fresh with what young people are interested in terms of how they're being turned on to, to come out to things. And all of that requires constant vigilance. In the same way that doing something that's a one-off pop-up that dies the next day requires vigilance. And, the skills overlap.
Rami, talk about that transition from Glasslands to elsewhere and going from fully DIY to, obviously a much more official and multifaceted operational space.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, when it comes to like the DIY stuff, obviously, like Todd here has been, especially when I was in college, I would go to a lot of his shows and events in all sorts of unique spaces throughout Brooklyn. And, when I was at Glasslands, it was kind of a semi-DIY. By the time I was there, people had been starting to move out of the space and not living in the back. They just like gotten their liquor license at the time. So things were kind of already transitioning. And I think there was just like an energy of that time of trying really hard to stick around. And I think as much as we tried, obviously the real estate side of things kind of has different plans for you. And, when a huge factory across the street turns into a whole bigger project, the block that housed all of the kids who used to run around the area kind of needs to leave. And, now it's the adults are in charge. So,
Bummer.
yeah.
I always said when we were all losing those spaces was like, honestly, in a couple of years, you really don't want to be here.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that sad.
Real.
So basically what we did was try to chase another area that kind of reminded us of this. So that's kind of why we came around here. And, I know Todd used to also run events further up the block on Johnson, right?
It's true.
Yeah. And, we just wanted to be in an area where we could grow, take on a little bit more space, and kind of continue to work with all of the artists that we had met and just continue that passion. And so a lot of our staff and team has been with the company and with the venue for many, many years. And I think that passion is kind of what continues to drive us to keep doing this as an independent too. So I think there were a lot of lessons of that era, but specifically going somewhere where we could make a lot of noise.
Amazing. I mean, a true, you guys were a true pioneer out here. I remember when I did the walkthrough elsewhere when you were building, I think it was 2015, 2016. And I grew up in Brooklyn. I pulled up on Johnson Avenue. I did not know where the fuck I was. I was like, where am I? What's going on here? Truly like
Sounds That Move Festival came together because this corridor of all these kind of quirky independent venues, from Silo to Chocolate Factory to 99 Sky, are all here on this one block now. And I think, shout out to you and Todd for, basically like building the infrastructure for places like this to exist. So, no, I mean, for real, like, you guys are, really important with that. Well, amazing. Thank you for that. Let's talk about the pandemic. I'm curious. I know we don't like to talk about that time too much, but again, everybody here sort of survived through it, and it was an interesting time. I'm sure, Alex, you probably had just recently opened. Was Sal even open yet during the pandemic, or you had?
We had not opened. It delayed our building the place by like, an extra year and a half.
Amazing. So I want to hear from you and Marcos. I know you had a interesting time navigating the pandemic. Mark has an outdoor space at Cafe Erzulie, and that was one of the first places that was active in 2021 when I was doing live streaming shows back there. But I want to hear, like, just talk about, and anyone who else wants to jump in, but definitely from you two, like, talk about what it felt like when the news, when it broke and when it started to set in that, everything was going to change, and how you navigated that storm and how you got through it.
I think a key for a lot of venues and restaurants that if you stayed in business, it's because you had a reasonable landlord who like cut a deal with you or cut your rent, who didn't move to evict you. And I think every venue owner and every story I've heard of a place that closed had an unreasonable landlord. I was running a small venue, also an illegal spot called Secret Loft in Manhattan, and we moved shows onto the rooftop, and we're doing socially distanced comedy shows and little like indie songwriter nights. We installed like a whole tent city up there on top of the building, which was great until people complained to the DOB. But we were in here doing like, the initial sound treatment and running cables and stuff, wearing masks because like nobody really knew what was going on, right? And working with the electrician and stuff, talking with masks, and then they'd go to work and take them off. But yeah, it just made everything more expensive for raw materials. The actual build out, it ended up benefiting us because it bought us extra time to really think about and plan the venue. So stuff that I'm like, oh, that was a really good idea. The original layout for this place was worse than what we ended up coming up with. So for some people, I think a lot of people, they embrace some hobby or talent. It showed you what was important because you had more time to reflect. But as far as for the venue side, I think it really was, yeah, it kind of showed you kind of who was on your side, I guess, as far as landlords or people who would give you a break so you could stay in business.
Mark, talk about that experience of the Cafe Erzulie backyard 2021.
So yeah,
it was a time, y'all. I was there.
I mean, COVID was a very interesting time. I think I had actually just quit my job to do cafe stuff full time. And so there was a moment where, I was kind of sitting on the couch staring at the ceiling like, did I make the right decision? And so it was definitely like a very reflective time for me. But to your point, Al, we were lucky to have the backyard. And so we tried to do interesting, innovative things with that space during the time. Obviously, at the peak of things, we didn't do much at all. But we had intimate small jazz shows, which sort of kept the place going. And then we would use the space to sort of film online content. So I don't know if people remember this, but I think there was an enormous shift from businesses or whatever it was to create things online because everyone was kind of sitting at home on their phones or computers. And so we sort of fell into that too, where we would invite an artist in, we would film these original sort of tiny desk shows and just kept going. I also think you make a very good point about the relationship with the landlord. I think had we not had a very good relationship with our landlord, things could have played themselves out very differently. And so that sort of just speaks to the importance of having a working relationship with your landlord because it is a fickle business, and you do need to ensure that whoever you're renting your space from, if you choose to rent it, understands what you're doing and what the mission is. And I think that was crucial sort of in keeping us alive. There's also, we were quite lucky to find ourselves in a situation where about a year before, a large developer had purchased the lot next door to us. And consequently, when a developer comes in and puts an enormous scaffolding in front of your building and in your backyard, you're entitled to money as a result of that disturbance. And because of the large scaffolding that was put into our backyard, it coincided with COVID. And so we had signed this weird deal with them where basically they were paying us monthly for the first 2 years of COVID. And that was really big for us because what we then did was we took that money after COVID and reinvested in our yard. And that kind of made our business from this sort of seasonal business where, you know, we were booming in the summers and spring to an all-year business where people were coming to Cafe Erzulie not only in the spring and summer, but also in the fall and winter.
Amazing. I think if people on social media heard that a combination of landlords and big developers saved culture in Brooklyn, their heads might explode. But it's good to hear that they're not all evil. That's amazing. This could be just for open for anybody, anyone who hasn't answered yet, but how has business changed since COVID? I know from my end, everything's more expensive, talent, labor, but like how has it changed in that time, and how are you guys navigating that? Larry, you want to take that one?
Good question. For us, it changed radically more within industry-wise. Prior to COVID, we had our lane, and most East Manhattan clubs had their lane. So, you know, if it was a Latin act, we would probably get the first call on a Latin act. If it was a hip hop act, we'd get a first call on that. Post-COVID, again, I can only talk about more venues in Manhattan, but across the board, I think as well. Venues now are they're much broader in their booking. And so we're getting, post-COVID, agents are not calling us for almost anything. And that in turn has made us, like I said previously, we're really doing our own programming 90% of the time. And that's actually been proved to be super fruitful. We're not dependent upon like independent promoters to come in to fill a house. And so post-COVID, it's just a whole other new era, very different than pre-COVID, where, you know, if it was a hip-hop act, the chances are we would get it. And if it was a Latin act, the chances are we would get it. Now those acts can go and with the agents pretty much anywhere. So the only other thing that I always find ironic is a place, since they're not in the room, and they're about, say, a Bowery Ballroom, will be able to get, an agent will sell them a Latin act or an Afrobeat act, but they won't sell SOBs, a singer-songwriter act, or a straight alternative rock act. So we're perceived still as being too ethnic, or, as I say, too much of one thing over all 44 years. So it's a different ballgame post-COVID for at least SOBs.
How about this from a profit perspective of both talent booking and from a revenue perspective in-house? Like, I know people are drinking less, or at least that's what everybody says. That's certainly what all my venue partners tell me. So, but I'm curious to see just how has that impacted you guys, and are you thinking about other ways to try to monetize people once they're inside the rooms? Rami?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, definitely. People are drinking less, but I think it just changes. I think it's a cyclical thing. You know, we've been drinking for thousands of years. It's just a matter of time for it to like, yeah, just thousands of years. Yeah.
It is kind of hard to believe people just woke up all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just a unique period of time. But in the for where we're at now, I think we have been trying to figure out alternative ways, such as like memberships. It kind of really helps from an accessible standpoint as ticket prices are going up, and you kind of have to find ways for your top supporters to be there in the room. You know, the people who do want to see new music, are into finding new music. You just have to give them that extra help and incentive to just swing by. So that's one way we've been doing it. Another way is we have this program called Pay It Forward, where on each ticket, anyone can kind of donate a dollar or two, and that kind of helps also fund this program where we've reached out to various high schools and colleges and kind of try to get kids who want to come to the venue to see all our concerts of 16 plus. And that's been a good way to just kind of introduce people and fill the rooms to some of the newer music, especially local shows that kind of need that extra help.
Amazing. Anybody else trying anything creative? Non-alcoholic menus or anything like that?
Well, we've had, I mean, at Market Hotel, you know, one of the things that was most challenging, I think, after COVID was a couple of different things. One, obviously, a lot of people quit or lost their jobs in COVID, and I think opened a lot of venues as their sort of, you know, dream project where they had a lot of time to think about it. So, and then coming out of COVID, there was suddenly a lot more, you know, for lack of a better word, competition. On top of that, I think a lot of the things that had already been moving in the music industry were exacerbated, you know, and talent got a lot more expensive because even fewer people were buying records. And the culture, and this is really the important part for us, the underground culture and everything became even more online and less connected to IRL experiences, which we're all the purveyors of IRL experiences. So you get to a point where, you know, it's hard to get people in the room, and when they do come in the room, for whatever reason, one of the effects that may just be coinciding with Spotify's rise is obviously the lack of people buying booze. And I would say the more popular somebody is on Spotify, the less alcohol you're going to sell, at least in our experience. In fact, it sometimes seems like the kids who come to those shows are like, what is this again? They're like, the song is going to play and they're going to be here? Like, what's going on? You know, it's kind of like a meet and greet, you know? In fact, very often the meet and greet makes more money than the show on some of those shows. But in any case, the point being, it became much harder to kind of like get back to our core thing, which had been about this sort of IRL stuff that whatever internet existence was outside of or just a reflection of. Now you have to cater. Not to mention the talent, of course, became a lot more expensive. One of the things we started doing to counteract the fact that alcohol sales were dwindling and it was harder to get people out for more things, as well as just harder to get the talent you want. I mean, as much as you can set out to open a venue and you think about the kind of curatorial you want to have, you can't just get what you want. You know, everything is negotiation, and especially in a place like New York where it's very competitive, having good taste has very little currency because it's really about who's got the dollars, you know, and who's got the connections and who the favors are owed to. So when you don't have a lot of those, especially as an independent space, you know, people don't take you super seriously in the music industry, particularly when you don't look like you have any budget, which is unfortunately our problem. So, you know, one of the things we did to sort of get more kids in the room, to get more people looking at us, to just bring in an audience and kind of rebuild what had been there, really not just before COVID, but for us before we closed down and had to reopen and went through this long process of legalization, was to start doing these theme nights, which seemed really antithetical to what we're about. But my God, they bring in ungodly amounts of young people who are very excited and who spend money on tickets without having to spend a lot of money on talent, regardless of whether alcohol is sold or not. And you start to think there's just other revenue ways to keep a space alive. And you really just have to be very open to all kinds of creative solutions to essentially finance what you're doing. And you know, we had done that through other spaces by kind of subleasing aspects of the space, bringing in partners to run little businesses here and there. And you really have to do that, all of that and more, if you want to survive in this town, especially as an independent space. You know?
Very interesting. Caroline, so I know you came on Sesame Babies, you came on to Babies, I think, after COVID. But how do you think marketing has changed in COVID? So I know as a promoter, I've seen many marketing plans from large concert promotions companies that are the marketing plan is essentially a Facebook advertising budget, and that's it. It's a schedule of when the ads run, and here you go, good luck. So I know Babies does. You were mentioning how you do the newsletters and you put your own thing, your own personality into your marketing. But talk about how you think marketing has changed since the pandemic, but also just in general, 2026. Like, I know from my end, it's not just announcing the flyer anymore. Everything has to have content attached to it. There's just a lot more that goes into every piece of messaging. So talk about what your process is like and how you're trying to be creative and innovative with your marketing.
Yeah, like you said, I came into Babies post-COVID about 2.5 years ago. And when I started, the job was very formulaic. You know, I was kind of handed the keys and they said post on Instagram twice a day, one press photo, one flyer, one press photo, one flyer, and everything would get like 4 or 5 likes because there's nothing to that. No one cares about that. And so I kind of turned it into something a little bit more dynamic and personal, touching on, I think, what I was interested in. I mean, during COVID, we all had nothing but our devices to entertain us. I mean, there were the noble souls who started beating or whatever, but otherwise, like, you were on your phone, and looking for personal connection in that way. And I think since then, marketing or just online delivery of information has become so personal in its own right. Like, obviously the term influencer means something in our brain, or at least it means in my head like lip gloss and, you know, brand trip, but it also means your personal influence, like your personal taste, and an entity, an individual person, and what they believe and stand for, rather than like, Nike says this is good, so go buy this Nike thing. Like, it's rather like, oh, Jeff from this bar likes Nike shoes, so I wonder why. I should talk to Jeff about it. I don't know why I went with sneakers when we're talking about music, but you know, people want to know about their friends' taste, and they want to know about their peers and what's cool and what did I miss? What did I not know about that people in my community or extended community are interested in? And so I think that's what I try to keep in mind in everything that we do with marketing, is keeping it personal. Like, we had this big free bonkers thing with the Dare the other night, and it was like star-studded and blah blah blah. And instead of posting like a recap video where it was like him DJing, like, hell yeah, check this out, you missed it, I had my intern, who was like 21, go and just like take a bunch of pictures of her and her friends having fun. And I just posted that about the event, because that's what we're there for. That's what matters. It's like, yeah, these people are enjoying themselves and having fun together, and, you know, they're at Babies and they're there for this event, but it's more about the people themselves. You know, you can do everything you can to make a space attractive to someone and communicate that online and say, look, we have this event and look how beautiful this flyer is. We spent $300 getting a graphic designer to do a really good job, and I bet they did, but it doesn't matter if the people that are there aren't fully themselves and like fully comfortable. So I think that's what I'm trying to communicate all the time, is like that kind of authenticity and personal taste.
Amazing. Anybody want to add anything to marketing? Anyone feel free to jump in.
Well, in the same spirit, I mean, you know, at Market, we really saw very low engagement for a long time on our Instagram and other social media. And so we looked around at what got a lot of engagement, and we became, frankly, a meme page. And that has driven more sales and interest than anything ever did before.
Interesting.
Meet me at Transpicos is like the,
Wasn't us.
yeah, I know, but it's, you know, it's good, it's good eyesight.
No, yeah, I think a lot of it has already been said, but one thing in particular is like the flyers aren't good enough anymore, right?
Absolutely.
I think
Especially these damn AI flyers. Everybody, don't kill that AI flyer nonsense, please. Sorry.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, I got a
you
little
know,
high.
you know, these days, you know, we're seeing that the events that are the most successful are the ones where more money is actually being invested into promoting the event than recapping the event. So I think historically what you would see was you would see someone post a flyer, and that was often enough to sort of fill a room. And after the event, you would have a recap, which would sort of create FOMO for people who had possibly missed out. Again, I think the flyer approach just isn't working nearly as much anymore. And so now, you know, the promoters that we work with and the DJs we work with in particular, we're really emphasizing and sort of pushing them to invest their time and energy into the promotion, right? I think if you go old school and you were throwing a party, guys would have flyers on Jamaica Ave and be giving them out. And it would be word of mouth. And it would be paste flyers up on the wall. But that effort is the thing that sort of filled the room up. Whereas I think today's version of that is literally getting in front of your camera, promoting your event online, and creating content around this party that you should be excited for because you're throwing it. So yeah, I think that that's been a shift because you know, also I think people are more bored, get more bored now than ever, right? So
Right.
the flyer thing worked for a while, it doesn't work anymore, and so now you need to engage people in a different way, and seemingly, again, I sort of creating this content prior to the event to get people excited for it is definitely working.
Copy. So what I'm hearing is if you want to know why ticket prices are more expensive, it's because these guys got to pay artists more because instead of just DJs now, they have to have a whole film studio just to promote the event. A lot goes into these things, guys, just so you know. All right, we talked about COVID, and that was like the last, obviously, monumental shift in the industry. I want to go back in the timeline a little bit, about 10 years prior, and talk about the Live Nation Ticketmaster merger. Obviously, there was recently a very, hopefully, well, we'll get into that, but a potentially monumental verdict that came down. We're all waiting to see what the results of that will actually be. But I would love to get your guys' take on what you would like to see come from that result, and how you feel. We talked about how the game has changed since COVID, but how has the industry changed since that Ticketmaster Live Nation merger? And I'm going to start with some of the OOGs here. So, Larry, you want to kick this one off?
Actually, I'm probably the worst person on this one, Alex, because I'm sitting on the sidelines because I have no clue of how it's going to affect the independent venues. I really don't. Ironically, I mean, in terms of just, you know, Live Nation and AEG, I've had a great relationship with the big boys for many, many years, and this is going to change sort of the subject a little, and I've had not as a good relationship with other independent promoters.
Shots fired.
Everybody is so independent promoters, and I'll include SOBs, even though I don't want to. We're so protective of our identity. We're so protective, and you can hear it on the panel of who we are, that when it comes time to say, hey, can I put a show in your room? Or, hey, do you want to use my room? That sharing doesn't happen as much. So I really don't know what the breakup of the Live Nation, you know, Ticketmaster. I mean, the Ticketmaster thing is going to be huge for everyone in the industry, you know, if they break that up. But aside from that, I have no idea what it's really going to mean.
Rami, Todd, any thoughts?
Yeah, the Ticketmaster division from Live Nation, that would be definitely something that we're all, as independents, probably hopeful that it happens. I'm not sure if that's going to really change too much. I think it might change some things on the 3,000 cap and under, knowing that most of the venues of that size are typically not profitable and become so thanks to the ticketing fees and the rebates and the venue fees and such. So I'd be kind of curious to see like what, which venues as loss leaders end up staying within that portfolio. So I don't know. I'd like to see less tour deals and just the opportunity to be able to have an open market where you can actually maybe have a chance to book someone you would like to. Seems pretty democratic to me. Yeah, I would say like those are like probably the two main things that I kind of would love to see.
I want to give everyone some context because
Okay.
I realize we talking inside baseball over here and we all know this, but just to give you some context. So in I think 2009, Live Nation, which was the biggest corporate concert promoter, already previously over the last few years, purchased up some of the larger indie concert promoters and kind of formed a massive conglomerate. Then partnered with Ticketmaster, who I'm sure you all know is the largest ticketing service. And once those two came together, as you can imagine, that created a lot of leverage, which is very important for any business. But when you have the biggest concert promoter, which is the biggest holder of all the content, and then the biggest ticketer, which gives you access to that content, obviously the leverage, it exponentially expanded, and that's what's kind of led to this 10-year conversation and finally lawsuit about breaking up Live Nation and Ticketmaster. And the ticket fees that you guys all hear and know so much about is sort of a product, from my perspective at least, I think is a product of that merger. There were always ticket fees and service fees and facility fees when you buy a ticket for anything. But once those two things came together, obviously, they set the price. Now ticket fees get built into everything. And it's sort of just a factor of the business, I would say. And that's led to artists get more money, which is good, but it's kind of skewed the whole structure of the business and the function of everything. So when you see those high ticket fees, many times they're absolutely necessary for guys like us as independents even to stay in business, because that's how the deals are structured now, and that's just where revenue comes from. So that's just a little context on that. But anybody else have any thoughts on what they'd like to see, or it doesn't even have to necessarily, we're coming to a close soon, so not even necessarily specifically to the Live Nation merger, but anything that you would like to see or what you're hoping to see in the next 3 to 5 years in the independent venue landscape.
I mean, I could speak a little to the Live Nation thing.
Please.
But I also think that sort of this consolidation of industry is like a larger issue. And the truth is that you're seeing this in almost every industry in the United States, right? So it's not just in music, but it's also in media, it's also in banking, it's also in tech, where you essentially have this consolidation of a few large, powerful organizations who determine the fate of everyone else who's involved. I think Larry made a point earlier where he mentioned that his relationship has actually always been good. And I think with the Live Nations and the big boys of the world, and I actually think, the same is sort of true for us, is that we're actually at this point too small to even really be a factor for those big boys. But I think if you are someone like me who owns 250 cap venues, why something like a Live Nation Ticketmaster thing is dangerous, and why these antitrust laws even exist, right? Is because if I one day decided, hey, I want to open up a 2,000 cap place, now all of a sudden it becomes difficult, right? So for people who don't necessarily have the context on this, I would say the majority of venues that are 1,000 cap and up in the United States are owned by Live Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moment you try and open up a room that size, you're in direct competition with those guys. And so again, today, there's not much impact, at least for me, at a 200 or 200 cap room. but for someone who may one day want to get bigger and have a bigger room, there's trepidation there because you immediately recognize, okay, if I were to do this, I'm not going to get any large artist that's going on tour with Live Nation. Like, how do I fill my room?
Right.
Right? And so I think the answer to your question is that the issue with Live Nation and Ticketmaster is an issue that we're seeing not only in music, but that we're seeing again across industry in this entire country, which is why a lot of people are referring to the United States these days as an oligarchy, right? Trump just went to China. He brought 3 diplomats and 17 CEOs across industry. So when you have businesses that also have enormous political power, the scary thing there is that innovation becomes challenged, creativity gets suppressed, and the barrier for entry into certain size places becomes more difficult. So that would be my.
Sounds like, so what I'm hearing is they'll let us play as long as we stay in our place. Once we get to a certain point, then it gets a little bit more difficult. And what I'm hearing for everybody in the audience is support your independent venues and go check out some small shows, small clubs, because these guys, and I would include myself in this. We're the last line of defense out here, to keep some kind of indie spirit and just you hear all the creativity that the panelists have talked about putting into their spaces and the passion that goes into their work. Yeah, that's that. I don't want to say goes away completely, but there's a difference between your local neighborhood restaurant and McDonald's. Once your hands are in, the product, every single product, it's a lot different than when a mass-produced product. So these guys are very important, and I hope everybody continues to support. And that's what we're doing here at Sounds That Move. Again, it's like bringing together independent venues. I know Larry talked about how difficult it is sometimes, and that's just the nature of the market. You hear the pressure that everybody's under just to keep it going and keep their own spaces open. So sometimes it's not that easy to play ball together and work together. But that's what we're trying to do here at Sounds That Move, is bring a community of independent spirit and artists and creativity together here. So I'm gonna go into just a quick lightning round before we get into some audience questions and wrap this up. But just to switch it to a little bit more positive note, what's one thing that is encouraging to you guys and that you're looking forward to in your business in the next 5 years? Alex?
This actually goes back a little to the marketing thread. A thing we've started doing that's worked really well for us is we bring in like local collectives and like DJ collectives or like very community based groups to co-promote shows. So like next weekend on our Saturday, we have Support Women DJs as like a co-promoter, and they're not coming in at the level of a promoter where they would book like the headliner and the talent. We book the headliner, but it works with their vision. So it's an all-female DJ lineup for that night, and they're doing a lot of the lifting and promoting it, and it's like kind of a perfect match there. And this has been happening more and more. There's like, techno DJs will have a collective, and they're playing shows at like Mood Ring or, smaller venues that they're booking themselves. We'll bring them in to support a night with like a bigger headliner. So it gets them a step up and establishing relationships with people doing these 500 to 1,000 cap rooms. And it helps us because it keeps us connected to the local community. And that DJ collective gets to come in and kind of like meet this artist and then bring their whole community into this like bigger room. So we're leaning more and more into that. So it's worked really well for us, being this kind of tie between very grassroots DJ collectives with like bigger touring artists. So I'm looking forward. Those nights are always really positive and like super fun. There's always like, at least 150 people in here who know each other from their own community, who are kind of like the base of that show.
Amazing. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. That's what the power of live music is, to bring people together like that. So it's great. Larry, what you excited about?
I'm just looking.
Other than retirement.
Very quick. I'm just looking forward to constantly, exposing new talent to New York City in an environment that's safe, friendly, and keep doing what we've been doing for the last 44 years.
Mark? Another venue, perhaps?
Yeah.
Breaking news?
No. No, I mean, I think similar to Larry, I'm sort of excited to continue doing what we've been doing. We are opening up a new place in downtown Brooklyn. That's actually going to
Hey, look at that.
be,
Independent culture is alive and well.
it's going to be same cap, so 200. I'm able to sleep at night, and yeah.
Copy. He said, I'm not going to go up to 1,000, but if I get 3, 4, 250 together,
There you go.
so this is smart. This is the innovation that only comes from independent venues. Caroline, anything you're excited about at Baby's All Right?
Yeah.
Nightclub 101.
I would say free and $5, $10 shows. We've been doing a lot more of those at Babies. We've really established a late night weekend thing called Baby Dance, and hundreds of people show up every time, and it's free, and it always will be. And we're working on a similar concept at Nightclub. And we're places for people, so we just want people to be there, whatever way possible. And free and $5 is kind of the best way.
Nice. Todd, I know you've been crushing it with the theme party. So other than the next Charlie XCX album dropping, what's excited you about Market Hotel?
Rat forever. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about young people, basically. I mean, I see a spirit. We work pretty directly with people who are, 18 to 25 is our main vibe. And I just see a sort of spirit of like non-cynicism among young people, which is refreshing because everyone my age seems to be pretty scared for the future. But I see a lot of people who are young who are not discouraged from striking out their own path. And I'm seeing that across the board, and that kind of fearlessness and enthusiasm is, I think, what drives any music community to continue, any cultural community really. And it's refreshing to see that is staying alive even among all the doom and gloom we all see.
Yeah, similarly, I would add to that it just feels like there's a lot of really exciting new music coming out of Brooklyn. That hasn't felt like that in the live music space for quite some time. I think we've had a lot of really awesome electronic music and DJ parties, but in the last year or so, I think there's a lot of like local acts that I'm like really excited to see where they can go, and reminds me of a decade or plus ago of where how it's been feeling. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
That's super encouraging. All right, I think we can open it up to some questions. Anybody have any questions? All right, I'll take. You raise your hand up first, yeah. Yep.
Hey guys, thank you so much for giving your time being here. I had a question whether you guys are a part of any coalitions together as small businesses, or whether there's any legislation that you guys are supporting to actually help protect small businesses right now.
SOBs is part of NIVA, National Independent Venue Association.
Yeah, the National Independent Venue Association it's a really amazing thing. It came together during the pandemic. It actually probably is the truest and realest, most tangible example of independent venues coming together and putting all the other stuff aside and collaborating. It's amazing what you can do when you have shared interests. Because at that point, it wasn't about who was getting what show. It was just about how we're going to keep the lights on. But it was organized by, I believe, the owners of First Avenue in Minneapolis and a couple of
LPR.
LPR in New York City. Shout out to them. And they hired a proper Washington lobbying firm, and they ended up securing the first industry-specific grant for live music venues, and that is probably why most of us are here today, to be honest. So shout out to National Independent Venue Association. They've continued their advocacy and support of the venue groups, and it's a great community.
That said, I think there could really, to answer your question, there could really be a stronger coalition locally.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the New York chapter. Shout out to
It's
Jen
sad to say,
Lyon.
there are several people in this panel I've never met before. We should know each other.
I was going to say Save Our Stages grant paid for these speakers. So it was the Independent Venue Association did a lot. There's also the New York City Hospitality Alliance. That's also just restaurants and bars too. But they're working with city council they're like reviewing insurance requirements because insurance is incredibly expensive for live music venues. They're trying to make it so outdoor seating can be year-round, or roadway seating can be year-round, which would be nice to not have to take it down every winter, which makes it cost prohibitive for a lot of businesses. So there are initiatives. There's definitely industry groups.
Save Our Stages also pretty much pay for this festival. And while we've been shouting out the unlikely heroes, the landlords and the developers, I got to take the opportunity to shout out Chuck Schumer, who was a big champion of that bill and ended up getting it passed. So you never know who's going to be in your corner at the right time. Any other associations that we want to shout out? Well, shout out to nah, nobody else supporting us.
I'll call out Babar is Brooklyn Allied Bars and Restaurants, which is another kind of hyper local for North Brooklyn and the Lower East Side. And that's more just like it's a mailing list, a lot of information sharing, like who do you guys use to install a sound system? What do you do if your ice machine breaks? So it's like a very practical group that's pretty good.
I think in the glasses right there, she had the blonde hair and the glasses had her hands up first. I got you other glasses next though, don't worry.
So I've been like doing like event organizing and like promotions with like organization for a bit now, and like I really love doing it. Like I think I'm like pretty good at it. So I'm not at the point where I'm trying to like do it like independently on my own. However, I've found that there's like I have some difficulty like finding like venues that are willing to like work with me without like an organization behind me. And I was wondering if you guys could like provide any advice like as venues, like how someone like me who's sort of like a independent like organizer or like promoter would like get the attention of like a venue to like work with them and like like I just looking for like whoever like who bring in like an independent like underground artist.
I mean, the classic solution is take a Tuesday and kill it. We've all got early week slots that are hard to fill. You come in and you impress us on an evening that isn't usually taken, and you'll get the weekend soon enough.
Anyone else?
Or do really well at a small venue first.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I also think, one of the things that I look for if I'm working with a new independent promoter or someone who's putting on events is previous history. So, where have you done it previously, if you have done it previously, and then also if you have, some numbers attached to that, that's always a plus.
I hate to be boring in this case, but you have to be, for SOBs, you have to be vested in it. So, unless you're bringing this amazing, unique idea that we think is absolutely brilliant, we'll play, I use a term, banco popular, so we'll back it, but 90% of the time, we need someone who's vested in the idea. It's part of the music business. And sometimes people forget it is a business when they're bringing just the concept.
I could add to this one too, because I'm an independent promoter. I spent my whole career, almost 20 years, working with different independent venues and trying my best to get them to pay attention to me and take my calls. And I'd say I give this advice to people a lot. Starting a business, you're trying something out, especially now, you have to just do it. You got to start somewhere. So like they're saying they want to see some results. They want to see a track record. So if you can't get Baby's All Right booked, for example, maybe there's a dive bar or a smaller, newer venue that might let you get in there for, well, it could be an off night, whatever, but you have to start somewhere. And even if you don't do great numbers, obviously that's always going to be the thing that speaks loudest and is heard most easily. But I would say, you guys feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you aren't doing great business, we can tell when someone's really invested in what they're doing and how things are organized and how things are prepared and what kind of intentionality and thought goes into creating the event. And I think, and this goes beyond live music or anything, but if you're trying to start something out on your own, just do it. Just start with something and make sure no matter how small it is, you do it really, really well. This day and age, it helps a lot to capture content of that really, really well done thing. And then try to take it to the next level, and you take it to the next one, and then, it's all brick by brick, and don't be afraid to try new things or do things for free or, do what you have to do to create that opening for yourself. Glasses here.
Hi everyone. My question is specifically for Mark, but I think it applies to people across the board. I'm a fan of Cafe Erzulie and Dambala, but I've also been a fan of Movement and Lovers Rock and Deadline, who are no longer here. How are you as a venue weathering this storm in Brooklyn, where it's changing drastically? And then for the other members on the panel, how are you weathering the storm if you see a difference now?
So I'm not quite sure why Buntins and Lovers Rock actually closed, but I'd imagine it's probably something to do with the landlord or finances or relationships with partners or things that something that you often don't hear about, but can lead to the end of a venue. But I think how we've been able to stay alive is just being extremely fastidious in every single vertical of the business. Like, Larry just said, it is a business, and so we treat it like a business. We really pay attention to every little detail, whether it's, reviewing our weekly sales or looking at, the impact of, or yeah, I don't know. Essentially, we're very, we're very, um, we pay very close attention to the business itself, right? So I think that's how we've been able to stay open is we're financially responsible. We reinvest a lot of the money that we make into the business. So for the first 6 years, no one ever took a dividend, which is quite a long time to not take some of the money that you're making and put it into your own pocket. But I think this, we've always felt that it's a long-term project, and so sort of short-term pain for long-term gain. Again, like I'm not quite certain how those businesses operated, but I think, I have some really strong partners who sort of fill in the gaps for the things that I'm not necessarily great at. And I think as a team, we really complement one another as a result. My childhood friend Chris, who's also my partner, handles a lot of our finances. My other partner Pete does a lot of the marketing, and then I'm sort of running around doing a bunch of different things, but with a focus on booking. But we definitely complement each other very well, and we pay very, very close attention to the numbers. So yeah.
Anybody else?
I think it's also about security and community relations not being a problem that makes the neighborhood want to, come down on your landlord and try and get you out. I think there have been, we're all in the same strip on Broadway, and you mentioned some other clubs over there. And, that's 2 different precincts, 3 different really, actually. And, it's paying attention to not being a nuisance in anyone else's mind so that they don't see reason to come after you.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me. I also joined the community board, which I think helped a ton. Yeah. And so being politically engaged has actually helped with maintaining the space a lot. And that was actually something that came about as a result of sort of pressure from NYPD very early on in the business, which sort of forced me to get civically engaged and to sort of figure out what the landscape looked like. And so I think kind of playing those politics has actually helped keep our doors open a ton.
Any more questions? I'll take this guy here.
Do you mind talking about phone use at your venues? Is it something you want people to film and spread what's happening at your events, or do you think it takes away from your experience working by yourself?
so since we do we're mostly a nightclub and doing electronic music at Silo, there are little signs around here that say, please no cell phone use, and we have them on the DJ booth. But I feel it's overblown. Personally, I think it was more of an issue maybe 3 years ago, and people were like, "Oh, the influencers are taking these videos with flash on the dance floor, it's ruining it." But I don't know. I feel that the etiquette has now sunk in, particularly with like Gen Z, who everyone was complaining about. And I feel now it's older clubbers are in many ways almost gatekeeping or being obnoxious by claiming that it's an issue when I don't feel it's bad. If you want to come in and take a video with your friends when you get to a club because you're all dressed up, it's the most fun night of the week, do it. And then most people put their phone away. So for us, it hasn't been an issue. And my philosophy has always been like, we throw parties. It's a big party. So adding more rules and requiring you to do something with your device, at least in my opinion, makes it less fun. And I kind of trust people, and we trust people to be responsible and reasonable with cell phone use. But that said, I have nothing against a venue like Refuge or Signal where they cover your phone with a sticker. I get it. But we haven't really found it necessary at Silo, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you could have the benefits of what phones do for promotion and for, getting the word out that you exist without the phones themselves being there, but it's not possible. So I find that the places that are anti-phone, it's kind of a gimmick in a way. It's not really, first of all, it's enforced, but enforced, you know what I mean? It's just a way to make a place convey that they want to be seen as a more serious culture for whatever kind of arts they're presenting. I find that it's kind of bullshit in the end.
It's marketing, essentially, is what you're saying. All right, any other questions? We got time for a couple more. Crystal, what do you have?
I have a question. So for Larry and those that don't know like the history of Brooklyn music scene, you grew up in Manhattan, like J. Cole, Kendrick, Drake. You had all doing one venue that was like open to everybody who's been in so long for another Mama Fava. I would say Rami, you guys had Glasslands, you had NBMC, like you guys and same with 250 and Market, you were selling all like things. And as some of the last independent venues in New York, maybe there's a couple more, but there's two monopolies that have taken over every single other venue in all of New York. Who are you guys excited right now to see? Who you have on your lineup coming up that people should buy tickets for to go see? Like, Rami, you mentioned that there's like a renaissance right now happening in Brooklyn music, which you also were part of back in Williamsburg, but no one was going to Williamsburg for music. Like, what are the artists that each of you is excited about right now? What excites you, keeps you interested in even continuing the venue lifestyle when it's one of the hardest industries to maintain, to financially be profitable in, and it's, early loading, late load out, and all of like a million things working against you. What keeps you intrigued and what artists are you excited about right now on the lineup?
Great question. Anyone, feel free to jump in.
This band called Touching Ice and Lip Critic are probably like the local ones that I was kind of into. Magna Carta is a great one. Sophia Stell is also, on the pop side, also doing really well. So those are just a couple names.
There are no specific artists, but like we're focusing on more of a South Asian scene coming to North America. So we're intentionally reaching out to agents in London and in India directly. And we think over the next year or two, that could represent 20-25% of our business. Again, our history is not to cherry pick a specific artist, but more of a genre that we believe in. And at the same time, non-music events, like I say, funny things like cultural things like Domino Night we just had, where people come in, play dominoes, hear some music. And just, I would say the other would be young, meaning 18 to sort of 25-year-old new jazz, just this whole younger jazz market that we're trying to develop. We started a series, Jazz for Lovers, and just generally, we're always looking, and we're doing this other thing, British soul, and for us, it's just music that we like, that we think we should be presenting to an audience in New York?
I am kind of the worst person to put on the spot for naming names because I just blank, and I'm not, we're all old and not directly involved in curatorial anymore, but there's a lot of genres coming through and a lot of specific parties and kinds of approaches to the genres that I've seen that I'm very excited about. We work a lot with this party called Helltech, which is sort of, it's kids who grew up in New York City, sort of across the board, racially, socioeconomically, et cetera, coming together and doing these parties that are throwbacks to various 90s and 80s electronic genres on the harder side. And there's a lot of these kinds of events going on. On the more live side of things, we have been seeing a whole lot of merging of different subcultures from the last kind of post-COVID era coming together and forming kind of a new genre, if you will. Like we've worked a lot with these sort of more youth-oriented genres like, you know, the revival of shoegaze, the revival of various forms of screamo, and you start to see these things kind of become one movement together, one sort of sound together. And it's just to see these different sort of formerly separate movements become coalescing into something that actually sounds new instead of being a throwback is what I find most interesting.
Any more questions? Oh man, we're gonna run out of time. This is amazing. Geraldine, Geraldine's our production manager for Salad this weekend. She's been working really hard. Shout out to Geraldine. She's been doing an amazing job, and we love her. What's your question? Better be good.
Can you please talk about quickly your lives before you guys started your venues, and how you feel about raising capital? Because New York real estate is expensive, opening a business is expensive. So how, whether it's grants, loans, etc., how did you guys open your venues so you guys did them? As far as like capital, how did you get money to create what you guys can make?
I was a software engineer. I worked for Bloomberg for 12 years and started doing venues, was doing venues and parties as soon as I moved to New York 14 years ago, but saved money and just was able, that in some ways that was freeing, having a day job. It was exhausting, but while throwing these parties and having my smaller venue and then financing Silo, I had a day job. So it wasn't as stressful, which lets you be more creative and a little more free. You're like, I knew I wasn't gonna not be able to pay rent because I had a day job. And it wasn't really until Silo was like off and running and I was sure I would actually have a steady income that I quit my day job.
I've been blessed. That's all I can say. We opened SOBs, and with little, I borrowed 30,000 from my father, and he had a small sandwich shop because SOBs has grown 3 times since '82. And once we opened our doors, people came. And back in '82, there were like 3 clubs within the 1 block area. And we almost got like overflow from those other clubs. And it's just been reinvestment. So I didn't go to school for it. I learned how to be a business person as it progressed. But in the beginning, it was a lot of fun. Till I had kids and a mortgage and all the other things.
I was also quite lucky to get a bit of help from my parents, who I have since paid back. And I had some friends who were working in finance and were kind of, you know, making a bunch of money at a young age. And we were industrious enough to sort of put it together. So I think it ended up costing us like $150,000 to open the space, which, you know, the original team was 5 guys. So we're now down to 3. But, you know, I think a combination of so prior to even opening, I was actually teaching kindergarten and 1st grade. And the opportunity presented itself because my father's friend actually owns the building that Cafe Erzulie is in. And so my friends and I put together $20,000 to actually start. And that was to just build out the backyard. And again, that was sort of between 5 of us. And we had initially gotten quotes to do it from contractors, but if you've ever been to the space, you'll know that you can't really drop material in that backyard. And so everything needed to be wheeled through the space and then dropped into the yard. And so because of that sort of laborious labor, it was extremely expensive to do the work. And so I got industrious, and a friend of mine had joined the bricklaying union like after high school, and never went to college, handiest kid I know, would come every weekend and basically coach a group of us through the renovation of the yard. And so we did that ourselves. We laid the bricks, we built the flower boxes, and then we threw like a giant pig roast, which was very successful. And after that moment was when we were like, okay, maybe there is something here, and scraped together the rest of our coins to sort of make it work. But to Larry's point, I think I was also quite fortunate to even have parents that were willing to try this thing out with me. And it wasn't without a lot of warning that if I fucked it up, that I would never hear the end of it.
I
Caroline,
can't
Life
speak
Before
to
Loud
this.
Music.
I mean, I just got here.
The spaces I have that operate now, I've been operating for, almost 20, more than 20 years in one case and almost 20 years in the other. Each one of them has opened and closed many times. And each opening and closing is a different story in terms of money. I've avoided, luckily, taking loans on all of them. I've avoided having big armies of investors, all of which I think can really hem you in. But I've never been recipient of grants except for the Shuttered Venues Operator Grant, which wasn't really that much in our case because we didn't. There was a weird technicality about that where if you didn't sell your own tickets, your revenue model looked much lower. And before COVID, we always used outside ticketing that was done through promoters. So we got a lot less than a lot of other people for that reason, but that's another story. But each time we reopened, whether after COVID or when we legalized or various other times, was a different financing challenge. And in all cases, we did it by the seat of our pants and tried not to take outside money at all because we never want to be compromising. And there's trade-offs for that. If you don't have the budget you want, you don't necessarily get the club you want. In retrospect, I probably would do things somewhat differently, just because be less struggle, less pain, and there's people who are willing to invest. But it is always different depending on where you are, and you're only able to raise the capital that people think you can produce, and so it's very hard for an independent place because all of the red flags of this isn't going to work out financially are there. So you end up getting money from small investors, people with more colorful business backgrounds who want to invest. But it is you just do it because you need it to happen. It's what you want. It's what you're doing it for. I mean, you've thrown your whole life away to make it happen. And it works out or it doesn't.
Yeah, we were able to fundraise through various investors, small checks. I believe I was like 24 or 25 when he started our fundraise and kind of had it done by age 28. So it was a very long drawn process. I think also when Glasslands closed, I also got a lot of support of people who did want to invest in the next chapter. The SBA was a really good way to get access to that, but that was a year and a half, and that literally was like blood, sweat, and tears. Like, they really do a deep dive on everything. And then ticketing money can help. We were one of the first Eventbrite venues, and they were very supportive at the time and kind of really helped us out. And then you get lucky. You just have to save a lot. We had a fair amount in savings that we had kind of lived very frugally for many years, and it barely worked. Barely worked.
What I'm hearing is a mix of luck, industriousness, and supportive parents.
Sweat equity.
Shout out to my parents in the second row here.
I'll say,
They lent me $1,000 to record my first rap album when I was 14 years old, and now I'm here doing this festival. So, for all you kids in the audience, when you get older, support your kids' dreams. It goes a long way. All right, we got time for one more question. I seen a hand shoot up there. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to. I just don't want to keep it dragging, but we'll be here. We'll come talk to us directly. But yeah, what's the last question, please? It's a great one to end on. An independent artist, what can they do to maximize their chances to get booked?
I
Your
will say
illustrious
the same
rooms.
thing I said to the previous question that was similar for promoters. Put a show together where you are on the bill. Go out to shows a lot. Get to know people. See who you like. See who people who are like you and compliment what you're doing. And put a show together with you on the bill, but not as the headliner. Find somebody who headlines. And again, ask for a Tuesday with that lineup, not just with yourself. Don't just send a demo or an MP3 link or whatever. Put a show together because we're all looking to fill our calendars without having to curate it ourselves, to be perfectly honest with you.
We want you to do the work.
And so put a show together with you on the bill and become knowledgeable in the community you're trying to make sense in. And you will find that that opens doors for yourselves. Rather, much further than writing an email saying, hey, we're this band and we've been around forever. We really want to open a bill. Whenever you have an opening, think of us. We're not going to think of you. Sorry. Put a show together. That'll help.
We do showcases, so you submit. We do them usually towards genres, and if we think it fits, you'll be on the show.
I would say, just think about, and this may be a good way to close this, but just think about how you can bring value into the situation. And that goes for all relationships and pretty much every conversation or opportunity you're going after. You got to lead with value. Like, I get a lot of submissions for artists that are like, check out my new music, it's really great. And then they spend a lot of words telling me how good their music is. And that's all well and good. And I would imagine we all feel the same way. It's yes, we want to hear good music and we appreciate that you believe in yourself and that your music is good. But at the end of the day, we talk a lot about the business here. That's not really what we care about. We care about, what are you bringing to the table? Are you going to sell tickets? Or can you make a flyer for the show that's going to be really cool? It's going to help us build marketing and add attraction to it. Are you going to I don't care if you're offering to help push amps and load out the room. We want to see that you're going to taking a step somewhere to provide value to the situation. And if you can embrace that and you bring value into every situation that you go into, that's going to get around. That's how it's going to build up. So open up for a show for free. Offer Caroline to write a guest newsletter. Tell Larry you'll help him curate a theme party. You know what I'm saying? Tell Mark you'll hand out flyers. Whatever it is, those are the things that are going to resonate for us.
Instagram DM.
What did you say? Sorry?
I said, don't send your pitch on Instagram DM.
Yeah, don't send the pitch on Instagram DM. But I mean, have the good music, but also have a plan to show us how you're going to help us let people hear that music. Because the music could be great, but if you can't bring anyone in the door, that's not helping us. And we're here to provide the spaces for you guys, but you guys have to, bring in the audience.
It's the music business.
It's the music business.
Forget
And
music and business. And as an artist, the sooner you acknowledge that, the better off you will be as an artist.
I think we can close it there. Everyone feel good? Thank you so much for coming out to the Indie Venue panel. Stick around for Sounds That Move. It's our last day. All independent venues at this festival. We got some amazing shows. You can get a day pass at the box office in the courtyard. And I'm sure if anybody has any questions or wants to come up and talk to us individually, I'm going to offer the time of these gentlemen for another 5-10 minutes.
From here on out.